early stages is overlooked, and there's a good reason for that, I think, is that the VCs are conducting very expensive due diligence and want to have a more convincing team and track record of sales. They typically want to have 2 million, 1, 2, 3 million of annual recurring revenue.
Welcome to my interview series with the VC funds, the Sourcing Stack. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by David Kremer, Director at British Design Fund, one of the UK's most distinctive early-stage investors backing purpose-led physical product and manufacturing businesses. Is a product ecosystem legend. Before joining BDF, he spent over 2 decades running 7 Towns, the family-owned toy and game design, manufacturing, and licensing business by his father, Tom Kremer, which developed and licensed over 250 products to global giants like Hasbro and Mattel. He exited the Rubik's Brand Limited business in 2021 through its sale to a publicly listed company, Spin Master. Today, BDF is the only fund in the UK that invests exclusively in early-stage physical product businesses. It operates as both an early-stage fund and an angel network, and every portfolio company receives not just capital, but hands-on mentoring from the operators turned investors who have actually built and scaled product businesses themselves. More recently, BDF secured 5 million commitment from British Business Bank through its regional angel program aimed at addressing regional imbalances in access to early stage capital and backing founders developing hardware across health, sustainability, and assistive technology. David, it's great to have you on the Sourcing Stack.
Thank you, Vinay. It's great to be here. Looking forward to that. Yeah.
Now let's begin from Rubik's Cubes to British Design Fund. So you've spent over 20 years running 7 Towns, co-founding Rubik's Brand Limited, and now you're a director at British Design Fund. What originally drew you from building global toy and game businesses into backing early-stage UK hardware founders, and what convinced you there was a genuine gap in the market?
Yes, very interesting question. My original degree was in mechanical engineering, so I've always been a product kind of guy. And whilst I've, as you say, spent a long time in the toy and game industry, I felt it was time to sort of step back to my roots a little bit and support products that were really going to help people and planet. And this is more of a legacy project now, where I'm using some of the skills that I got from developing toys and games and my engineering skills, developing companies to help founders through that ecosystem.
Interesting. Physical product and hardware startups have often seen as higher risk and more capital incentive than software businesses. With long development timelines and thin margins, what makes them attractive to you despite all that operational complexity, supply chain headaches, and patient capital requirements?
Yes, and I suppose that's one of the reasons that there is this gap in the market. But I do think that that is a perception as well as reality. In other words, taking thin margins as an example, there are very, very high margins available if you have a good intellectual property protection, innovative product that is solving problems. Then people are prepared to pay a premium price, and they can't source that product from anywhere else. And the new margins are very high. Capital intensive, it's interesting. I guess if you were comparing it to fintech, you've got a lot of development cost and a lot of development cost ongoing to keep ahead of the market. Yes, there are sometimes, high capital items like tooling costs or R&D, but I don't think that any really greater than you might find in other industries or sectors. Especially, if we are talking about British Design Fund kind of products, like soft prosthetics for children, or like a device that tackles sleep apnea and snoring. These are relatively simple products, and therefore they're not so capital intensive. Obviously, if you were building a oil refinery or a new production method of creating concrete, then you'd be talking a kind of company that BDF would not invest in, because it would be too capital intensive. And then we come in at a certain time, which I think we'll talk about, in the product life cycle. So we think that we are shortening that development timeline. We're coming in at a little bit of a later stage, often in university spin-outs. So it's sort of we'll talk about technology readiness level, but the proof of concepts happened. It's been tested. It's been probably a pilot study might have been done, even a paid pilot, and so then it's a productionizing process. So I think all of these things have to come together to make it an attractive proposition for BDF.
Right. Very interesting, because the mainstream narrative around hardware is usually low margin, capital heavy, difficult to scale. But your point is almost the opposite. Strong IP can actually create very defensible, high margin businesses over time. Great. Coming to the UK hardware scale-up gap. First of all, congratulations on securing 5 million commitment from the British Business Bank. What convinced you that there was a persistent funding gap, specifically for early stage hardware manufacturing businesses? And why has this category been so consistently overlooked by mainstream VCs who seem perfectly comfortable backing software?
It's a great question. I do think that the pendulum is swinging now. I think that fintech, for example, has been overvalued by the deluge of money that has been flowing into it. And we are seeing very, very attractive valuations, even more attractive comparative to fintech, for hardware-backed businesses now. And so I think the pendulum is swinging. I think why this early stage is overlooked, and there's a good reason for that, I think, is that the VCs are conducting very expensive due diligence, and want to have a more convincing team and track record of sales. They typically want to have 2 million, 1, 2, 3 million of annual recurring revenue. And we're often investing in pre-revenue or paid pilot stage. So I can see why the VCs are coming in later on. They're putting in more money, and they want to take still a lot of risk, but less risk than we're willing to take.
Right. It sounds like part of this issue is structural. Many traditional VCs are optimized for software style investing, where capital efficiency, rapid scaling, and short feedback loops fit their model much better. Whereas hardware businesses often need potential capital before they reach 1 to 5 million revenue range that institutional investors typically want to see.
But at the same time, those businesses are more fragile,
right,
sticky than the hardware businesses. So again, I think, but you're right in terms of speedy return on capital, potentially, yes.
Right. The next question is, the British Business Bank's regional angels program specifically targets investors operating outside London. You've built global businesses from the UK. Why is addressing regional disparities in access to capital so important for the future of British manufacturing and product innovation? And where do you see the strongest pockets of hardware talent outside the capital?
Great question. And I think that if you are manufacturing a product, you need to have a supply chain and you need to be sourcing those components. And typically that will not be London centric. You might have a headquarters in London, but if you are producing products, you'll be needing to source different components from different places. I think it's also spreading the wealth around the country, which is important. And I think the benefits of that is that if you're in Sheffield or Manchester or Leeds or Cambridge, there's probably more loyalty from your workforce, because it's a smaller world, and they're pleasant places to live and work. Houses are less expensive, and so they tend to stick around a little bit longer perhaps than London, where everybody's looking for the next best job and spending 18 months and then they start to look for other places. I think in terms of talent, we are very, very blessed to have some fantastic universities that have very good spin out commercial arms now. And so I'd say that often it is around university towns, whether that's in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Manchester, Birmingham, etc.
Great. That's a fascinating point, because manufacturing innovation naturally develops around supply chains, specialist capabilities, and industrial clusters, not necessarily around financial centers like London. Great perspective. Now, building the physical product companies in 2026, PDF looks for companies at TRL 5+ with commercial clarity and protected IP. Could you just walk me through what you actually mean by that, and why a polished pitch deck or a pretty prototype alone will never be enough to get you across the table?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so technology readiness levels are well known and understood by the hardware sector. For those that don't know them, technology readiness level 5 means that the hardware has been validated through design, investigation, and testing. It's usually system-wide. So rather than component testing, it's the completed product. It's not yet ready to manufacture, but that would be the next sort of level, would be minimum viable product launch. So that's our minimum criteria. More often than not, we are in TRL 7 or TRL 8 when we're actually investing, which is where the hardware has been proved in an operational environment, and there may be some low batch manufacturing or paid pilots.
Got it. Now, looking at BDF's portfolio, from assistive prosthetics to sustainable glazing to circular economy materials, which categories of physical product innovation excite you most over the next decade, and why?
Yeah, I think three areas: medtech, agritech, and water related. Those are the three areas that I think interest and excite me the most. And we've supported companies in all three of those sectors, but very, very interesting. I think what is happening in agriculture in particular is really, really fascinating. How we're going to be producing much, much higher yields with robotics and much lower labor costs.
All right. So three different sectors. All these industries of where physical innovation has very real-world consequences: healthcare, food systems, mobility, and infrastructure. Starting with agriculture specifically, where do you think the biggest bottlenecks or opportunities still exist today for founders building physical products?
Well, I mean, agriculture is a vast and complex sector, but I think it's around. I think it's around about AI and robotics, whether it's picking or weeding or spraying or optimization of bioengineering, capturing
right.
sort of capturing methane from bio waste, for example, and then using that to power your farms, your decentralization from the grid, those kind of things, looking at integrated systems of solar and water power and methane is an interesting way and increased crop yields.
Got it. Now, quickly shifting into the licensing and global brand building. Licensing has been a core part of your business model at 7tons and Rubik's. Is licensing an underutilized route for early stage UK hardware founders to generate early revenue and prove demand, or it is a distraction they should only consider much later?
I think it's less understood than making a product and selling a product. But it's interesting that especially a lot of the technology companies that we are supporting, there is a lot of knowledge that has to go alongside. So a lot of our companies that we're supporting have robots as a service or systems where there is an ongoing maintenance contract. So it's a complex field which requires quite a lot of knowledge. Now, when you license a concept, it's very attractive, but you're putting everything else. You're very high margin because your costs are right down and your risk is right down. As long as you've got your licensing partner is doing a good job and selling lots of products and you're getting your royalties flowing in, it's a very attractive business model. But for early stage, you need to make sure that those companies are genuinely making the most out of the opportunity. And that can be a little bit tricky if you haven't proven out the business model and market fit a little bit better before you go down the licensing route. So I think in a lot of cases, it is appropriate. And we encourage our companies to look at licensing. But after they have probably done a good job in the UK, then they might, and they have revenue and they've ironed out all the little wrinkles in the product and the service, then to take that model to license in Germany or Italy or US is probably the step and the stage that you want to be focusing on.
Great. Now, founder advice and looking ahead. If a founder building a physical product approached you tomorrow looking for early stage funding, what would make you immediately lean in and what would make you walk away?
Well, let's do the lean in first. Sector experience, IT validation, a diverse team of, at least, the founder may have a significant shareholding, but we would like to see that there are other people with skin in the game. Friends and family investing, good proof of concept, and good evidence of demand from the market, letters of intent, and that sort of thing. Those are the things that would make me lean in, and a clear help for the planet or people.
Mm-hmm.
Red flags would be a classic red flag is when they say, "Well, we don't have any competition." There are no competitors. Because even if there are no direct competitors, the competitive landscape is even then, what is the incumbent? Because the incumbent technology you're replacing is your competitor. So it's a red flag to me when somebody just says there's no competition. I'm just going to walk in there and it's going to be easy. That shows a naivety that is worrying. For example, if the founder has got no colleagues around them on a very small advisory board or no advisory board, it's just really is a one-man show, that also concerns me, because you can never do this by yourself. No matter how talented you are, you have to build a team. And so if you haven't got proven evidence that you can build a team or you've worked well in a team and that you value a team, that's another red flag.
Great. That's actually a very insightful answer from you. I mean, especially lack of competition point. Many founders think no competition is a strength, while experienced investors often see it as a proof there may not be a real market.
Yeah, and I think to understand your market is really important. I think that's underestimated by a lot of founders.
Great. David, this has been a fascinating conversation. I think what really stood out throughout this discussion is that while software continues to dominate the venture narrative, there is an entire layer of real-world innovation happening across manufacturing, medtech, food tech, agritech, and materials, also industrial technology, that simply cannot be built without physical products, patient capital, and operational expertise. Now, your journey from 7 towns and Rubik's into backing the next generation of UK hardware founders through British Design Fund gives you a uniquely operator-led perspective on what it actually takes to build enduring product businesses, from IP and licensing to sourcing, manufacturing, and scaling globally. Thank you again for joining us on the Sourcing Stack. I am delighted to have you with us. I'm sure founders, operators, and investors listening to this will take a huge moment away from this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Ben.